Leader of the Third Party.
Well, Speaker, if you keep jobs at Honda and still fire 100,000 people, that's 100,000 people that are still unemployed, Speaker. But the bottom line is, my next question is also for the Deputy Premier. You know, last week, Speaker, 15 nurses in Leamington learned that they'd lose their jobs when the hospital decides they'd be cutting obstetrics and gynecology unit out of the hospital. Not only will that put nurses out of work, Speaker, it is going to make it extremely difficult for women in this part of the Southwest to access OB-GYN services close to home. What other health services in Ontario, Speaker, are being cut as part of the Liberal austerity budget?
Deputy Premier.
To the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care.
Minister of Health and Long-Term Care.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to speak about Leamington Hospital and the decision that was taken by the board of the hospital to, on a go-forward basis, to close the obstetrical unit. Mr. Speaker, it isn't a final decision because, in fact, it's a decision by the LHIN, the local LHIN, and, in fact, the LHIN next Wednesday has announced already that they'll be having a community meeting. They're going to have an open board meeting of the LHIN specifically on this issue, Mr. Speaker, including 1 hour set aside specifically
Member from Hamilton Mountain, come to order.
To this important issue. So, although in fact it was a decision by the local board of the hospital, it isn't a decision which is finalized. And I should add as well that currently Windsor Regional Hospital,
Stormont, Dundas, and South Glengarry, come to order.
Already roughly 50% of the women who deliver, who are from the Leamington area, do deliver already in Windsor.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Well, Speaker, 2 weeks ago, 40 nurses at the Timmins and District Hospital found out they would be losing their jobs, and 26 beds will disappear. So I repeat the question, what other health services in Ontario are being cut as part of the Liberal austerity budget?
Minister of Health, Long-Term Care.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that from time to time specific changes are made by hospitals in terms of their staffing requirements. But the fact is, Mr. Speaker, that in last year alone, 4,000 more nurses were employed in this province. In fact, 24,000 more nurses are working in Ontario since our party, the Liberal Party, took power in 2003. So I understand that the member opposite, the Leader of the Third Party, wants to focus on specific incidents where human resource decisions are made by, frankly, Mr. Speaker, where those decisions should be made at the locality, by the hospital, in concert with the local LHIN as well. But the reality is, Mr. Speaker, that we're deeply committed to nursing and the profession in this province, and the evidence is we've dramatically increased not only our investments in that profession, increase in scope of practice, the nurse practitioner-led clinics, but also 4,000 new nurses last year alone.
Final supplementary.
Well, Speaker, when it comes to Liberal austerity cuts, the healthcare system is not the only victim. People for Education has reported that the Liberals have slated 125 schools for closure before 2015. That means throwing parents and students into chaos across Ontario. So can the Deputy Premier tell students and their families just what communities will be losing their local schools as part of the Liberal austerity plan?
Minister.
To the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm always fascinated when I get these numbers that pop up out of nowhere. So I can guarantee you that there has been no directive, so I have no answer to what's 125 schools because there is no list. But what I can tell you is that we do know that there are over 600 schools in Ontario which are more than half empty. We are actually spending on the order of about $1 billion per year on empty seats. We actually think on our side of the House that it would be better. That's a very good idea. We will change the funding formula. We actually think on our side of the House that we should invest money in the children who are in our schools rather than in empty seats. Thank you.
New question. From Kitchener-Conestoga.
Yes.